Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here today on this Tuesday, November 9th. I am Nick Kanoki, the Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I am excited for today's session centered around ISO 55000. And before we get underway, I just want to thank our patron sponsors, Definitive Logic, Onuma System, ABS Quality Evaluations, and ABS Group. Without their support, we couldn't do programs like this in our newsletter, so we're really grateful for that continued support, as well as that of our organizational members. A growing list, as you can see here before you, and we're excited to amplify the message of these organizations and work with them, collaborate on important issues. Just want to highlight the ALN A55K Professional Certification course that the Andrew James Advisory Group is launching December 6th. Limited seats left, last I heard, so reach out soon to the Andrew James Advisory Group or anyone at the ALN if you're interested in this kind of ISO 55000 professional development. And with that, I would just say, if you're out there watching, we want to hear from you. So please send any comments, questions, feedback to the chat, or use the Q&A function of the Zoom webinar, and we will put those questions to our panel of experts. And with that, Jim, why don't you start us off and tell us who's on the panel?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nick.
Of course.
And Yvonne was probably pleased to see that there was a logo there for the US tag. So
I noticed. Yes, I saw that. Very nice.
we can thank Nick for that. So that's good. Well, so let me start with questions. So I'm Jim Dieter, CEO of the ALN. And notable for this session, I've been involved in the ISO 55000 process since the beginning. Attended the first meeting in 2010 by a telephone call from Myrtle Beach, Virginia, because we couldn't fly to the UK because of some volcano, I think it was. But led the US delegation in the development of the 2014 versions of the document. And I'm actively participating in the revision and rewrite process now. So we got a great group here today. I'm excited about this. But I mentioned Yvonne, so let me start with Yvonne. How about let you introduce yourself? Is that possible?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. I'm Yvonne Carney. I work as a Director of Strategic Performance at WSSC Water, a water utility in Maryland. We serve a 2-county area and a water and wastewater utility. And I also serve on the US TAG ISO committee with a particular focus on communications and promoting the ISO standards.
You're the Mirror Committee lead.
Mirror Committee lead. Thank you for the tech. Yes, thank you.
And it's an important job. And yeah, we'll talk. We'll circle back more about that. But okay. That's good. Annette, would you introduce yourself, please, and tell us where that beautiful library is you're calling from?
Yeah, so my name is Annette Kämpf-Dern. I'm from Germany, and in fact, I'm the deputy lead of the German Mirror Committee for the 55,000. I have been on the committee, I think, not from the very beginning, but at least for the last 10 years, which is nearly from the beginning of that. At the moment, and for the last good 10 years, I have been a professor and in science for management. At the moment, I'm in management of facility services, but I also have been real estate management, real estate development, and have done a lot of strategic work, for example, at the Boston Consulting Group. So I have some consulting experience in strategic management, not necessarily asset management, but of course, that have been parts of that. And otherwise, the library is in northern Italy, and it's a bookshop, and I really like it and took that picture. And so I thought I spoil your minds when looking at me at the moment.
Nice, thank you. Former, well, everybody on this call is a former participant in ALN Thursday at 4, which is going to be ALN Thursday at 3 going forward. We're moving up in time. So look forward to those conversations. Rich, how about you, sir? I don't know enough about you to talk about you. I've only known you for, what, 30 years or something like
Yeah, about that. Well, I've been an asset manager for most of my life, probably starting as a teenager, in one form of asset or another, like real property and in rentals and real estate development, buying stuff and selling stuff and fixing stuff. But also been involved in collecting, lending and collecting money. I used to work for GE Credit as a branch manager, so I'm aware of that as well. Also been involved in the corporate side, you know, of receivables and billing and those things. Also involved in, for example, decommissioning nuclear power plant here in the United States. And that was my first job in asset management is for Department of Energy and decommissioning nuclear power plant. Then I moved on to in aerospace with GE and eventually Lockheed Martin. So I spent about 40 years with those folks. And I've been involved in ISO 55000 also, not as early as Jim, but pretty close. You know, I think our first meeting was in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, around 2010. And Jim led that meeting. He said, hey, we're getting together and migrating to ISO 55000. And again, that was held by ASTM. And Jim and I have been involved in ASTM also since inception of, I guess it's 2001. Maybe that's what it was. And so I've been involved in a lot of this stuff for a long, long time, and a lot of different perspectives of it, the financial perspective, the actual management of stuff perspective, and policy and standards.
Yeah, and he's, I think Rich is our outstanding government regulation legal framework guy in the U.S. Has just a wealth of knowledge. So thanks. And Kris Goly, the star of the show.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kris Goly. Yeah, I'm based in US right now. I'm a US TAC head, or what some countries call this mirror committees. We call this US TAC. That's Technical Advisory Group to TC251. I've been on the committee since PC. I don't remember, Jim, how long it's been, but quite a few years, I guess. We were a number of virtual meetings. I think the first in-person meeting as a plenary, I think was still PC, was in Prague, having nice beer somewhere out there, right? And I've been in asset management, I think as long as I remember. It wasn't my chosen career. I thought I would always be R&D and so on, but somehow I got into the asset management, reliability maintenance, and spent all my working life doing that. I was fortunate enough to be able to work on 6 continents in different industries and live on 3 ones. And right now I'm based in US, and I think we're going through a very, very interesting and important time for ISO 55000 family of standard, because we are redeveloping this and so on. So it's quite interesting time. So if anybody is interested in this, is a time to join the Mirror Committee and US TAC. Thank you.
Good. So for the rest of our time here, we'll keep it informal as we like to do. You know, provide some basic information, and then get to you know, some of the issues and topics, and you know, what's engaging the people, those of us that are involved. You know, it strikes me that, you know, people might want to know what's going on. What are you guys really talking about? But Kris, let's get through some of the. Let's you and I get through some of the little just basics first. You talked a little bit. We have the US TAG, Technical Advisory Group, and others. Countries called Mirror Committee, and in general is known as a Mirror Committee. And that's hosted by ASTM, who is the administrator, right? And Jennifer Tercey is our person there. She does a great job. And that, is all under the auspice of ANSI, the American National Standards Institute. So, and Kris is, the lead now for the chair and head of delegation for the US. So, as you've taken that job, Kris, how is that all working for you? All this infrastructure you have supporting you.
You shouldn't ask this question. I have never ever been so busy in my life right now. I'm attending ISO committee almost every day. It is 7 a.m., 6 a.m., 10 p.m. and so on, every group, and it's so busy that I enjoy this. It was much easier to have in-person meeting in the past but now in the COVID, we have to do this over internet. But I think we're making progress. I think we discussed this many times, that I don't think many people appreciate the international community, how diverse the backgrounds people have, how interesting the meetings are, how interesting the perspectives are based on the culture, based on the country, based on the system, and a few other things. So it's interesting. It's very interesting time for me. I know I'm very busy, but I enjoy this, to be honest. Yeah. It will be interesting to see where the standard goes in next, I think, 2 years' time. But I think what is going to happen, it will become a better standard. I'm honestly convinced of that. I think the people got more educated around the world. People basically started appreciating the 55,000 standard and few others. And I think they started seeing the benefit of this. And when you look around what's happening right now and think about the Glasgow meeting right now, what's happening, people really started appreciate the environment, the sustainability, and a few other things. So I think the ISO 55,000 has got a very important role to play moving forward. That's all I can say right now.
No, that's a perfect introduction. I think it's, when I was in that role, I was really struck by, when I read words like we're representing the U.S. interest in this important effort, and I'm like, wow, and not just as a lead, everybody. We're, if you're participating, you're representing U.S. interest, and that's quite an honor and a privilege and a responsibility. I guess that wasn't a question. Okay, so I got to keep talking.
I think, Jim, you hit the nail on the head. I think we need to realize the responsibility. We're representing US. We represent US as a country. And I think it's very, very important. And I think this is an honor to be delegates and do what we are actually doing. We're not representing ourselves. We're representing the country.
Annette?
Yeah, I think I would like to put another perspective on that or deepen that, because on the one hand, I had joined one of the physical meetings, and which was like a 1-week meeting. And of course, it was nice to see many people at the same time, but being a newcomer, it was also hard and difficult. And you came into a group that knew each other for years and were not able to really get to know them. And I think that the meetings that we are having now, the virtual meetings, at least the last half year, I got so many more opportunities to get to know people and to have discussions. It's very time intensive because we are doing that like twice a week, every second week for 2 hours, so 4 hours every second week for like the last half year. And so it's not as much work as Kris is doing, because I'm only in one working group and not in several. But sorry for the background noise. It's the dog I have to watch at the moment. So she's suffering, but I'm not hurting her. Anyway, so I think the virtual meetings, and that we have it over an extended time with time in between where we can look at things and get our minds and talk to each other. I think it's a more effective way on working on that than meeting half a year and have phone calls or whatever in between, which was before we had the Zoom meeting time. So I really appreciate this way. And I think it adds on the quality that we are producing, plus the education and the development we have seen in the last couple of years. So I think the level is much higher than we had it 10 years ago. So that speaks for a better, hopefully we are doing all this effort, which for many people is personal time. It's not paid time, and we have to appreciate that. It's a voluntary effort where people are putting a lot of time in there, being aware of the responsibility and knowing on the impact and I think this is something that motivates us, that we have an impact on something that is important. I think I switch off my phone for a moment until I have done with my dog, but I wanted to say this. It's very important. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's so cute. Oh, that's great.
I think that was the Amen
Mike-
choir.
Mike and Nick thought it was my dog, and I had to say, no, not this time. It has been. But the
That's the
library.
beauty of live meetings, right? And no editing.
There, she's back. Now, I think Annette made.
I hope it's getting better now. I just closed her out of the door.
Thank you. But I think it's, there's, having participated in the in-person meetings, and my God, I got to go to South Africa and Japan, and just did some, the memories are, lifetime memories, and getting to, meet other people over time. But I also see big advantages to the virtual meetings, as Annette says. I really hadn't thought of the angle on how much easier it is for a new person to engage in a virtual meeting, because everybody's kind of on the same footing. It's where if you meet in person, you have to, develop relationships. And what you said over here last night is, all of a sudden much more relevant. It's interesting. I don't personally, I don't think ISO will ever change from the virtual meetings. There could be instances, but their feedback so far is blended meetings are not a good idea. In other words, some in person and some virtual, really hard to pull off in a week-long time. Very difficult. And I don't see organizations supporting people to fly all over the world anymore to do it, which will be too bad. But also, I think maybe we get a better documentation set. So Yvonne, you started talking about a little bit about what your role was, and can you tell us some more about that, and hopefully about relationship with the ALN and how that's working?
Yeah, so in my role as Strategic Performance Director, I help to facilitate the development and achievement of our strategic plan, as well as to encourage the use of data to drive decisions. And one of our strategic priorities is to optimize our infrastructure, the performance of our infrastructure. And so this is a topic that has been something in my professional career have found to be really, really important.
Excuse me.
And something that I just want more organizations to be utilizing asset management and standards to help plan and guide and ultimately kind of achieve that performance and benefits and the value out of their assets. So it's something that I have enjoyed being able to participate in. This is my first year. I think I started in January, I think, or maybe December. So I have met everyone virtually. I haven't met anyone in person yet. Nope, not yet. And what's that?
Weird.
Not yet.
That's just weird, isn't it?
I know, it's
now
weird.
you know
Yeah.
people you've never met. Yeah.
That's right. So yeah, so I mean, I guess just talking about that experience being a new volunteer, you know, it's sometimes like, as Annette mentioned, people have known each other for many years. So just, you know, kind of trying to find where you can, you know, fit in. And it's true, actually, in thinking about it, as you were commenting on it, you know, we all are like equal size boxes on the Zoom screen. So it does provide equal opportunity to meet one another. But yeah, my experience has been really positive. I think in our first few months, it was sort of figuring out the direction and what the need was, and getting kind of consensus around, and it makes a lot of sense that we want to really be working on promoting the standard, and especially with new standards coming out, a new version. And so our mirror committee has been working really hard on that, and a lot of really thoughtful and hardworking folks that are part of that. And I've been happy to be a part of it.
Super. And can you talk about the website and the
Yeah.
US tag becoming a member of the ALN?
Yeah, exactly. So it's tried to figure out, like, you know, how could we just have more presence for letting people know what asset management is and what the ISO standards are. And there have been, if you look on the ISO website, there is a list of what's known as known certified organizations. But in discussions with, you know, with the ISO, it's an international website, you know, so it's difficult to change the format of an international website. So we explored options for, you know, is there something that we could do, not just to list certified organizations, but to really create a community for people that are interested in asset management, that are doing asset management, that are maybe becoming mature in asset management, as well as certified. All of these things. We wanted a place for people to be able to get to know one another and have case studies that people can relate to and pull good examples from. So we partnered with Asset Leadership Network in order to do this. And so we've become a member of ALN, and they are helping us to stand up this website. And so far, the Mirror Committee has been working on figuring out what, you know, the overall kind of main components of the website in terms of finding out more information, joining us. And then also, you know, what if, as people see the website and they're interested in joining this community, what kind of information would we like for them to provide to us? And so that's what we've been working on so far, and we're excited to start to see how that takes shape, and ultimately to bring that to the US tag and to promote that more broadly as a vehicle for getting the word out. And I think especially the timing of this session and the big decision over the weekend with the infrastructure bill that's been we've all been waiting for so long. I think this is really great potential timing to align these things as a really important tool for folks who are building that infrastructure. So
super. Well, let's surprise Nick and ask him to make a special guest appearance, and because Nick's the guy that's actually doing the work. Anything you can share with us? Have you started to work, Nick, or on this development effort?
I've started the work. I mean, you guys sent me that wireframe kind of outlining the basic functionality that we hope the website will have. And sent some information about the database we hope to create of information about ISO 55000 adoption and use and certification in the US, and a lot of information there. And I'm really excited to have something available to the public that people can participate in, as well as benefit from, kind of look at the information that's out there and see the success stories or what people have found as far as return on investment. Because I think that's something that may stop a lot of people when they start considering more strategic, big changes in how an organization does things process-wise or the structure they're using. And so it would be really cool to be able to have information people enter themselves that they say, look, we started this journey, a year ago, and here's where we are today. And, here's what we've invested in it and what it's been returned to us, in monetary value as well as in other things. So I'm just excited to start doing the work. The work hasn't really begun for me yet, but the excitement's building, and I'm wrapping my head around the project, and I think it's a good one.
Thanks, Nick.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Were you raising your hand? No.
Yes, I wanted to add, because I think it's really interesting that the US is starting something we have talked about in Germany also in the last year very heavily, although so much smaller, but the adoption and the awareness for asset management and our standard is very little in Germany. And I think, and we also figured out that success stories or companies or adopters on the move and what they are experiencing, which benefits, which hurdles, this exchange is so important. But I mean, I don't know how many we have certified in Germany. In fact, I think our certification is not even on the German level. We have to use international certifiers because it has not been established, I think, in Germany. And so, of course, this kind of exchange or role models or best practice is totally missing. So I think I have to advise our people on what Nick is doing on the website and have this kind of international exchange forwarded, maybe, to have some more movement and some more leverage on that.
Yeah, that would be exciting. I know as we were doing it, we were thinking too that it might serve as a helpful frame of reference for other countries as well. And we're sort of it's our pilot to try this. And we hope it goes well. And if so, we'll look forward to sharing it with you.
Yeah, great. Great initiative.
Cool, great. I know one thing we talked about as a mirror committee is that people as practitioners get just really excited to hear stories of things working well, or even things that didn't work well, and please share your lesson learned. And I had previously worked in transportation before working in water and wastewater. And I know the conferences I would attend about asset management, it was wonderful to get to hear some of those presentations and stories. And so, to be able to maybe capture some of that or begin to capture some of that, good lessons as part of a website, I think will go a long way to helping people connect to it, maybe in a way that helps to increase the adoption and usage of the standards for certification.
I mean, in Germany, I started my dissertation on asset management, on real estate asset management in 2007. And at that time, the word was nearly unknown. The first discussion about real estate asset management really started in 2009, more or less. And so when I was asked to get on the committee in 2010-11, it was something, and it's still something that people don't really know about, that real estate asset management, which is not financial asset management, but what we are talking about, this is still something that is not known until abstract for most of the companies, they don't know what value it could bear, and most engineers are not trained in management questions. And so all the topics we are talking now about in the 55,000 about leadership also, and the connections and strategic asset management plans, and strategic, what is strategic? I mean, an engineer is not educated in what is strategy. So this is something that is very new, and that's why I'm so excited to be somebody who is at the forefront, but I also would like to have more impact, in more traction, something moving forward, that people are, that it's better known, that people do adopt what is there in knowledge already translated from this financial or business asset management into something that can be applied to infrastructure, to real estate, which is not the case at the moment. It's very operational at the moment, not very strategic, and not about the value generation that we are talking about.
A couple interesting topics there, but let me circle back to that in a minute. But Rich has been patient. He's good at patient. So, Rich, tell us about what is and has been your role in this 55,000 rewrite effort.
Well, again, I started out very early, and maybe not as active as very early, but it eventually right after 2015, in our meeting in Japan. And what excited me about ISO 55,000 is, in fact, the definitions of an asset, whether it's an item, a thing, or an entity. And then going on to say, well, it's tangible or intangible. Well, all those things mean a lot. And sometimes we've grown into some of those concepts, particularly where assets are intangible. And I think we're seeing more and more as we mature into overall the world of asset management, we can understand there's a lot of things that need to be managed, particularly when we go back and we start seeing root cause analysis of things that have gone wrong. And a lot of times what we see is that, well, it's probably some internal controls issues, that the safeguards were not in place. But at the same time, that people did not do the right thing with it, and the controls were not in place. But also asset management, normal standard asset management, or people not paying attention and let things happen, as opposed to preventing bad things from happening. And I think that adds a whole different area of how we sustain assets, but also the opportunities. One of the things with that also is the fact that you can, not only is it a risk that should be managed, but also opportunities. And I think both of those are assets, need to be managed. And the flexibility for the person who's adopting ISO 55,000 gets to create their world based upon what's relevant to them, what is material to them. And I think it's the flexibility and how it can be used for different industries and different functions and different sizes. I think that really acts the opportunity for the overall use of ISO 55,000. And as far as over the years, though, we do see maturity, as far as groups. The more discussions occur, the more mature those groups become, and kind of opens up the aperture as far as the opportunities with asset management.
So what, Rich, you worked on ISO 55,010. Can you give us a minute or so on that, and what that was like, and how you see that ringing value?
Well, ISO 55,000 is about alignment between financial and non-financial. And again, the breaking down of silos within an organization of what is financial, what is not financial, and make sure people are talking, and making sure that it's just not what's on the balance sheet, but also what's off the balance sheet that's important. One of the things I've been thinking of, the last few years is that, when we take a look at what is a person's or organization's biggest asset, which usually off book, unrecognized capital gain. When we think, well, what is unrecognized capital gain? That's the stuff that where over time things have improved in value. United States, however, for example, has adopted like an impairment standard that where cost or value only goes down. The European standard can recognize where costs go up. So in a lot of respects, the European standard is more accurate as far as reality, where you have an impairment where you actually recognize the fair value of today versus what the value was 20 or 30 years ago. So all that stuff kind of merges together, but also as long as people recognize that the more you recognize, the better you can actually play the game and also improve asset management in your organization.
Thanks, Rich. So let's just look at there's a number of standards that are being worked on right now, but let's just look at the 0-0 document and the 0-1 document right now that are our primary focus. And let's start with what are the hopes people have that this document will do? How will we better? Kris, you want to give that start us off on that? What's your hopes for?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we have still long way to go. What we developed in 2014 was a good base. I think people adopted this, or some countries adopted this. Some countries are more advanced than others and so on. I think what we need to do is build on them. There are some room for improvement for both 0-0 and 0-1. And I think the actual drafts, work group drafts, are quite okay. We still need to work for them. What I think about when I think about the standards, my concern right now is that some people are pushing for too prescriptive standards, not for a standard. And it cannot be too prescriptive. At this stage, at this strategic level, it cannot be prescriptive. I also like to mention a couple of new standards coming up, the 0-12 and 13. Especially the 13 is of a lot of interest because we're talking about data management, basically. I think some people who are involved in this group understand there's a lot of discussion what is asset data and data asset, right? And where should we go with that? And basically the agreement is right now that we should treat data as an asset. To what extent, to what degree is interesting. I just read an article a couple of days ago that China is introducing some new regulation on cars being exported outside of China to be checked, all the electronics and so on to be checked of data they contain. I never thought about this, but we're sending electronics all around the world in cars. So the data is becoming very, very important. So from the asset management point of view, I think it is critical that we're dealing not only with assets and the asset management system, but also with data. I know that we addressed in 0-1 document managing the asset data, but I don't think we addressed it to the extent that is very important for the future. So I think it is one of the important factors right now with 55,000 family of standard is to deal with data as well. I think it's very important. My concern is also that, especially 0-0, some people are pushing this to become more like a handbook. So people can learn about asset management from that. I'm totally against because there's a lot of books and so on, and you cannot learn about managing assets from a standard, right? But I think we're going in the right direction, and I think in 2 years' time, we'll have a family of standards that are much more modern and reflect much better the current state of technology and asset management.
Thanks, Kris. Annette, can you add thoughts from your perspective on the same question of are we going a good direction? You know, what do you see as positive?
No, I definitely see it going into a good direction, and my hopes and expectations are a bit different, which shows the broad spectrum that is associated to the standards. In fact, I'm engaging because I would love to see that management and strategic management and like this kind of organizational vision, mission, objectives regarding, especially like coming from an industry that is very diverse and small. It's not water and it's not electricity. It's real estate, and real estate is very small and medium enterprises, a lot of them, and they are not using any kind of strategic management, and they are not knowing about that most often. And I see if we can put it in very simple and not a handbook in the size, but like make it explicit to use asset management as the tool that it can be, and make it available to small and medium enterprises, like to a whole variety. And most of the companies do have, any organization does have assets, but they are not managing them as they could, because they have no idea about that. And if we can add with the standard series on making this knowledge more available and adoptable, then that would be a big hope for me that we can do that. And I think we are on a good way, and we have to make sure that it's not too big, that people are not offended in reading it. But of course, on the other hand, making it explicit, making the concepts that are in there, and we are talking about principles and concepts and so on, and to make them available to a broad community, that would be my hope. And I think we are on a good way on that. And that's my intention to help with that, to do strategic management on assets.
Yeah, Annette is she is really good at keeping people straight on using the right terms and using them the right way, especially around management issues. That's good. Rich?
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of recognize is that, and at least how I look at it, is that asset management is part of an organization's internal controls. The COSO internal control framework came out about the same time as ISO 55000. The COSO internal controls framework is used in government as well as industry.
Stands
internal control framework. Yes, that's the one that's used by GAO and GAO Green Book, and it's also used internationally as far as an internal control framework. I believe that asset management is part of that overall framework. One of the problems, of course, is that how does it work, and has it been recognized? I mean, for example, how many positions are called vice president or chief internal controls? Have anybody ever heard of that? Well, there are a few, but very few. And in most cases, when you focus on something, you get better. And that's the same with internal controls. That's the same with asset management. So if you focus on either one of those, an organization will get better. And particularly if you follow the process, identifying your objectives, identify, are things effective and efficient? Are things reporting reliable for financial and non-financial? Are compliance with laws, regulations, standards? All those things mean things as far as when you go down and look at a particular process or organization. And that can be at the top level, or that could be the bottom level. Same with the assets within those organizations. They also need to be identified. And usually on an identification, that means basically it's material, it makes a difference, it may be on book, off book, and that it's measured and it's assigned to somebody. And when it's assigned to somebody and it's accountable, then things happen. And to where, because usually what occurs is that if things are diffused or accountability is over a large amount of people, then no one's responsible. So it's important overall that internal controls as well as asset management, there is that accountability to avoid bad things, but also make good things happen.
Thanks, Rich. Yvonne, you work for an asset holding organization, and I certainly understand you're not here to speak for them, but what are your thoughts on, do you have hopes or expectations on, potential changes to 55,000 and 55,001?
Well, I haven't gotten an opportunity yet to participate in some of the revisions, but I'm hearing through the meetings, hearing about some of the new working groups and the new elements that will be added. And certainly I'm most excited about the asset data and thinking about the value that it brings. I mean, in my work, that's really what I'm trying to, I'm sort of a salesperson for the data and how it can help to improve all of those organizational objectives. So I think always that concept and helping people understand that and promoting that, I think that's really exciting. As well, that there's a working group working on the people and competency as well. I think just in my own experience, sometimes in my previous work, I've seen that asset management can be, it can even if the intent is that it breaks down silos, it can become siloed. So I think in thinking about adding that additional element about, who are the people who will do these jobs of building and maintaining and making decisions. And, I always think about the connection to me is, if you have someone whose role it is to enter data into a work order ticket, how do you put in place what is necessary in terms of engagement with that employee so that they understand why that is so important that that information be accurate and how that information might be used for the benefit of the whole organization and the customers to make good decisions. So I would say those are, I'm excited to see that, that the standard evolves to recognize that there are some of these new topics that need to be considered and included.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited that I'm working on the principles section, that in addition to the 4, and we all know the 4 right off the top of our heads, right? the lava.
Quiz,
right?
you have to have a quiz now.
Oh, quiz. Okay, Rich, what's one of them?
Can't hear you.
Which was one of the 4 what's one of the 4 fundamentals from 55,000 2014?
Well, I don't look at it that way. I look at it differently. It's a wrong answer.
Kris,
I'll throw one out there. I got it. I got
Yes.
one. Alignment.
Alignment. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that one of the 4?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Annette?
Very good. Okay.
Annette has one.
I like leadership very much. I know it's not the primary, but I like it very much, and it adds on the people question. And I like that very much, the focus on leadership.
All right, Kris, there's the 2 other ones. You want to name one of them?
Just Google this, would be the easiest way. One of them was value, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. That we're still debating what value is and should we include this or not. Yeah.
The one I like is assurance, to make that easier. Assurance, I think that's somehow strange. Yeah, I don't like that so much. I think it's the least of the 4.
Yes, but this is a new one. Assurance and the sustainability are the new ones. Yeah.
Well, the ones that were proposed here in the current draft are sustainability, adaptability, and integration.
Mm-hmm.
So there's much to be said about that, and I think we're not giving anything away if we say that's what's in the draft. But excited to think that our thinking has advanced. I was so pleased to participate in the 2014 version because the document that we produced, in my opinion and opinion of many others, was state of the art and the best document that had ever been written on asset management. And I think that's really saying something. So we can't stand still. We need to move forward. And I think those three concepts, are important, moving us forward and moving the standard forward and making it more, hopefully more usable, as Annette said, to different size organizations. Mike and Nick, is Jack Kelly a participant? Because I was going to promote him, but I didn't see his name on the list.
I don't see him, Jim.
All right. David hasn't arrived.
Yeah,
So
Jim, let me just backtrack a little bit. When I say I don't look at things that way, I look at kind of like things like an
okay.
organ.
You want
look
to
at
dig
things-
out of the hole. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I want my nickel back or whatever. Look at things almost like an organism. And I mean, for example, a bird doesn't fly. It takes a whole lot of things to make that bird fly. And it's more than just those four things. It's the whole organism that has to work. And sometimes we can't describe what that is. But when we look at a particular organism or a system, sometimes we can define what that is for that particular circumstances. So all those four, yeah, they're interesting, but may not necessarily be useful in all circumstances. So it's partially true, or partially not true. So I don't particularly look at that principle as but that all have to be present equally or not equally. It's interesting, but it may not necessarily be make the organism work or be effective and efficient.
Thank you.
That's why I look at it.
Yeah.
Annette,
So I may
and
not
then Kris.
remember those things in order.
I mean, you mentioned it, and I don't know whether I may dare, but on the other hand, I don't want to get rid of this opportunity to talk about the topic sustainability or the principle or wherever it is in the standard, because I pushed it in or brought it in or suggested it, and we will see whether it stays. But on the other hand, when we talk about that, especially in these days, where we have the G20 and we have Glasgow, and not using the opportunity to have, and it might be prescriptive, maybe, but I think we have to take the opportunity to have some part, like good asset management, in my view, has to deal with sustainability and these issues, because it has so much impact on all the sustainability issues, not only the green, not only ecological issues. I'm really talking about sustainability. And if we look on assets, and especially in the area where I'm knowledgeable of real estate, which is a home, which is quarters, which is a workplace for people, there's a social dimension, there's an ecological dimension, and there is a huge financial dimension of real assets, that we have to look at sustainability as a principle with regard on asset management. And that's why I'm trying to get it in and have it as a principle, because I think it's so important. We may not miss that. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity to state it in this situation. And maybe it's opposing, so we have the possibility to discuss that. But I wanted to state it. I hope it's okay, Jim.
Oh, no, that's perfect. What's important? And in fact, note to Mike, I think we need to schedule an ALN roundtable discussion on sustainability and asset management. And I think we can get Annette to volunteer, and Rob Lewis has been quite outspoken, and some others, that I think we can have some different points of view and shed some light on the topic. I think would be really worthwhile. I'm quite a fan. Yeah, Kris.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Rich, there is a many way to skin a cat. So we may argue about certain things, but at the end, I think we all have the same goal. And Annette, when you're talking sustainability, we have to be very careful how we use this word. Sustainability from the point of business. If I'm a businessman, I will run this business the way that is sustainable and bring me profit. It doesn't have to be aligned with societal and society requirements, how we understand this now. So in that context, we have to be very careful. I'm totally for environment and sustainability, don't get me wrong, but in that context, we have to be very careful how we use this word.
Yeah, it's, you know, the word is and can be used in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
And finding the right words to put in the standards so that it's so that it's meaningful, but that it's not going to send people away from the standard, quite frankly. There was a question from anonymous attendee that says sustainability be more palatable if it is framed as simply a longer term version of something organizations are already doing, like reliability or efficiency. If there's anybody has a thought on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the approach that been talked about a long time ago, where you take a particular asset and use it as a cash cow or something that you continue to maintain and improve. In a lot of cases, you do have assets that are considered cash cow, not worthwhile to invest. And sometimes that's a good decision. A lot of times it's also a bad decision. And so certain cases you sustain things based upon a particular standard. In some cases, you may not care too much about that.
You know, that's, you know, and one of the origin stories of asset management is the organization I used to work for in the UK, AMCL, was involved in, I might not have all the details right, but this is the basic idea, between the UK government and the rail system. The rail system had been outsourced and run into the ground in just such a way. You know, just really money extracted from it and not reinvested it. Certainly not sustainability was part of what they were looking. And that was the evolution of Past 55 was a method to look at a system and, you know, can we maintain this going forward, and in this case, in the public interest and the interest of those stakeholders, and perhaps that's what we're talking about now for a variety of things. And I think 55,000 brings us to they include all the stakeholders. Think about all the different asset types. You know, it's just really important. And I don't see how we can come out with a revision of the standard without including. Let's see, Mike, are we scheduled for an hour today or longer?
We can go as long as it goes.
Okay, well, then let me suggest, I know Jack isn't on, but Lindsay Ziegler's on, and maybe we could promote Lindsay if she's willing. Because she's in the role of working for AJAG and developing and delivering training around these documents. I'm sure she's quite interested. So she might have something to say, or she might have some questions for us on what we're doing to her, how we're going to make her life better or worse or something. Are you with us, Lindsay?
I am. I realized I needed to unmute myself. And with everybody's permission, I'm not going to put on my video because I was not anticipating speaking. So yeah, so I sat in on the US TAG meeting this morning. I've been lurking on those meetings for, well over a year. And I finally decided that I needed to dip more than my toe in. So I shot out a whole bunch of emails right after that meeting and then realized that everybody I was emailing is in front of my face right now on this call. So, but that's okay. I'm sure everybody will get back with me. So there's a lot going on right now. There's new standards. I'm really excited about the standard that's going to talk about treating data as an asset. Because I worked in IT for many years. we will decades. I worked in IT for decades. And the value of data is so important to an organization these days. And I spent a lot of that time in insurance companies, and really data is what you have in an insurance company. There's money in the bank somewhere, but you don't have machines, you have computers, and that's basically it. So that's a really interesting piece of the new part of the standard to me. And it sounds like there's a lot of really, really good and interesting stuff going on. That is definitely going to impact how we do our training. I hope you're frowning, so I hope you're hearing me.
Oh, no, my problem is my eyes aren't good. I try to read the chat and I have to get too close and I go, what? Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, as long as you're not frowning at me.
Don't pay any attention to me.
As long as you're not frowning at me, I'm happy. Yeah, there's going to be, I think, quite a bit that's going to impact the training that we do. And it's going to make it, I feel, more robust and more valuable as we work through this process. And I've already reached out to the exam committee there at the ALN so that we can start thinking about, as the standard moves and adds these really important new topics and areas of thought, how do we keep the training aligned with the exam so that the A55K certification becomes even more valuable over time? So that's kind of where my head is right now. I can see a lot of work coming down the pike at me.
Well, let me ask you one other question. So you're heavily involved in doing the training. When you're doing the training, is there something that you get to and you go, geez, I wish they fix this in the future?
We've got some things in the training that we talk about very tangentially that are actually, from what I understand, going to become part of the standard on a much more robust basis. Life cycle planning is one of them. We talk about asset life cycles, but we don't talk a lot about in more detail about how that works. And so, yeah, there's a few things I think that I'm hoping to see come out of what the committee is working on right now. The 55010, which was the finance piece, I think could be stronger in terms of how you understand the relationship between finance and asset management. I'm often frustrated by US-based organizations, I think particularly, that don't want to talk about their ROI from doing ISO 55000. And that makes it really hard to go into an organization and say, look, this is a great thing to do. Look what it does. It helps you control your risk. It helps you understand what your assets are doing for you. It gives you line of sight up and down and across the organization. And then the next question is always, how much is it cost and how much is it going to save us? We don't have good answers to that. So I'm really glad to see both the upcoming revision to 55010 and also the website work that's going on with the ALN and the US tag. I think that's really exciting stuff right there. So yeah, there's stuff that's coming down the pike that I think is going to be great. And I'm not afraid of a little work.
That's good. Well, thanks, Lindsay. Hold on, we'll I think be talking a little bit more. But I
Okay.
see Mr. Bordenaro has raised his hand.
Yes, because Lindsay has given us a great segue to promote the value and benefits from asset management program that is going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern today. It's our second program with the Australian Asset Management Council. And we have established that specifically to address this issue, Lindsay. And I went to them with, do you have any ROI? They don't use ROI. So we say value and benefits. And what we've done is established a set template for slides that organizations, this is our second one. We're going to have a third one in March. You have two organizations, one from the US, one from Australia, and they answer the questions on, what was the value? What were the challenges? What were outcomes, intended and unintended, etc. So over time, there'll be a set of slides, a database that will allow people who have publicly presented, and there'll be a recording of the event available to be able to learn what others got for their ROI, their value and benefits. So.
Thanks, Mike. Kris, you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. I think we have to be very careful when we use term ROI, because usually people interpret this as a simple payback time. So for the non-financial people, they don't understand ROI, they just calculate simple payback time. Also, I think, Jim, I mentioned this before quite a few times. I had opportunity to talk to a number of companies, both privately owned and publicly traded. We talk about PAS 55 and then ISO 55000. And they were not certified and they were not seeking certification. However, they did adopt the standards. And they told me, yes, we do benefit from that. So when I asked, can you show me how much benefit, what benefit did you get, and so on? The answer was very simple, no, we will not do it. So when I ask why, because we are going to lose competitive advantage. We don't want our competition to know about that. Very simple. And it was a basically dead-end street. You can't ask more questions. What did you do? How did you do it? And so on. But it was in US. I'm not sure what's happening around the world outside US.
Rich?
That's exactly the challenge here, I think, Kris.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I've been so happy that Jim Dieter and his so many colleagues have a very deep connection to the US federal government, because they have to be transparent. They have to share that information. And that's why we've got such great input from more than a dozen federal agencies who are explaining their executive level perspective on the use of ISO 55000. And so we're kind of getting around the very real private companies' interest in competitive advantage. And we're going to try to expand to state and local government and get more studies, stories. So,
Yeah,
The other thing that, sorry, go ahead, Rich.
I wanted to bring up though, like when we talk about things like return on investment, or is it customer satisfaction? When you refer to the government agencies, it better not be return on investment. It better be customer satisfaction, the people it serves. The same with public utilities. It should not be return on investment for public utilities. It's customer satisfaction. That's why they call it public. That's also the same in real estate. The real estate owner also has to determine what's more important, short-term return on investment or customer satisfaction. And so there's a balance that the owner has to make that determination. What is wanted more? More money or sustainability with your clients, and making customers happy. And so those are things of which each entity has to determine what that is almost on a daily basis, you know, and how they do their strategy with that.
Yvonne, did you want to share your comment that you added in the chat?
Yeah, sure. I was responding to Rich, and I said it can still be ROI for utilities because customers are investing in the utility via their rates. And so they deserve to know what value they're getting for that investment.
And like the utilities, for example, utilities are not a racehorse; they're a workhorse. And utilities, they should not try to transfer themselves from a workhorse to a racehorse. Because obviously that's how you get in trouble. All of a sudden, that you can sacrifice your customers for trying to generate large IRA for investors. So there's a balance there.
Well, I think another way that you can measure it is what the Air Force is currently doing with their projections of if here's our current total asset portfolio, and here's the condition of our total asset portfolio. And if we continue to allocate money as we have been, here's what happens over the next 10 years or so. If we allocate money differently, then we're going to have better condition assessments on our mission critical assets. And the other stuff is gonna frankly go to heck in a handbasket. So just being able to visualize and demonstrate, okay, here's what we can do. And again, as you say, Rich, it's not ROI for the Air Force. It's the ability to support the mission. And it's a little hard to interview the stakeholders of the Air Force, which are pretty much every citizen of the United States. That's a lot of us. So you have to have some kind of a different way to look at it that still demonstrates what you're getting for this investment in asset management. I think a perfect example is the city of Washington, D.C. They invested a fair amount of money and time and effort into just one piece of asset management, which was cleaning up and justifying their data. And as a result, suddenly the bond rating agencies said, okay, now we believe your asset registers. So we're going to improve your bond rating, and that saves them millions of dollars in interest every year. So there are ways to measure it that are not necessarily ROI. And I'm sorry, that was my B school background that I had to say ROI, but you need a way to measure. You need a way to show that you're getting benefit from asset management.
Well, let me do this. As a wrap up, I wouldn't call it a lightning round, although I like lightning rounds. But succinctly, let's say, let's have a little go around. We had an ongoing and interesting discussion, formalized in Jack Dempsey's TC 251 paper on managing assets versus asset management, which has been expressed in many different words. But perhaps I would succinctly call, are these standards about the assets, or are they about the value the assets provide to the organization? And everybody thinks they know, several people on the call this morning were certain that this wasn't an issue at all, that they totally understand what it was, and they didn't agree with each other at all in that regard. So, should this standard be about life cycle and talking about the life cycle? Because that was a hard line the first time. We did not talk about anything beyond the concept of life cycle. Or is it, should it be more about the assets? Should it be more about the value to the organization? Rich, I'm going to make you go first this time.
Yeah, I think it all depends. If you're in an organization, it all depends on what you're paid to do. If you're paid to be administrator of property, and you're supposed to be compliant with regulations on the various life cycle of property as far as recording and inventorying and records and such. You better do that. In other words, you're managing assets. You're not managing the company. You're managing those assets or specifically identified that you have to manage. On the other hand, if you're the president of the company or manager of operations or whatever, but you have to look holistically, then that's different. So it all depends what seat you're sitting in, and both are important. So it's not either or. Somebody has to do something.
But should the standard, what is the standard about? Is it
Standards
about both or one or the other?
Oh, I think it's about both. I think it's about both. It's like, what's more important, your right leg or your left leg to get someplace? Well, they're both important.
Okay.
And don't try to
Yvonne,
do
how
without
about
the
you?
other. Don't try to do without the other. You won't go too fast. Or others won't like you.
Yvonne? I'm sorry.
And is the lightning round that you do choose one? Or do you have
Well,
the
we're not going to
choose
hold
many?
your feet to the fire too hard if we tried that. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I would, of the things you mentioned, I'd probably, value creation for the organization is probably what I would most emphasize. And just in thinking about how, you don't have the assets just to sort of sit there or be turned off, or, I mean, they're there to serve a value for your customers, and being able to have that be well aligned and understood, I think is really important.
Thanks. Annette?
I think it's about managing the assets in a way that they generate value for the organization. So, I mean, this is the definition, but what is on there is picking up what Yvonne said. The assets are not just for purpose of them for themselves. It's to get to reach organizational objectives better, based on assets which play an important role in most of the organizations. So it's about the assets, but it's about managing the assets in the optimal way. And therefore we are talking about asset management, but management also means, and I think that's what picking up on the ROI and all this is, management always starts with setting the objectives. And this is something I think we can get more forward, that it's about setting the objective. What do you want to do with your assets? Why are you having them? And then finding the ways, the strategies, the activities to reach your organizational objectives and use your assets wisely. And I think the standard is about collecting how we can do that, how we start with objective setting and how we go on with strategies and leadership and how to connect all that. That's what the standard is about, or are about.
I like that. Start with the why you have the assets. That's great. Lindsay, thoughts?
I don't think I could say it any better than Annette just did. That was absolutely perfect. Yes, it's about managing the assets, but you have to start with the objective. What do you want these assets to accomplish for your organization? And so I truly hope that we don't lose that top-down perspective in the standard as we work on it, because that to me is the thing that is missing in engineering departments, is that top-down perspective. It's not an issue of, am I adequately maintaining these assets? It's an issue of, am I managing these assets in the way that brings the best value to the organization and helps the organization meet its objectives?
I think this is really kind of groundbreaking stuff. That's really good. I like it. Kris.
Yeah, very good question. I don't know. Is the standard about asset management, or is the standard about asset management systems for asset management, right? I think we had this discussion, and people were managing assets for millennia. And they did this one way or another, right? Every organization manages itself and manages its asset. I think the standard is about systems that would help organization to better manage their assets. And I think Lindsay mentioned this, that to link the business objectives to managing the assets. And I think Annette put this together very well. I think we have to look from the top down and bottom up perspective. There is an asset is for a reason. So looking from the bottom up, you think what needs to be done to the asset to meet the objective of the organization. On the other hand, if you look from top down, you have to have objectives of the organization. Yeah, you know what the organization is out there for, to deliver, I don't know, output, services, whatever it is, and make sure that your asset actually is supporting the objective. So from my perspective, what the standard needs to deliver is the best practices in terms of setting up a system for asset management. And as a deduction, in managing asset as well. Maybe it's a little bit convoluted, but.
That's good. Yeah, so I'm feeling this power that I'm in this, at least on my screen, I'm in the center with all these people, in front of me. And I feel like was it the Lerner McNeil News Hour where we go around and ask everybody all the questions? And at the end, he'd go, wrong. And then he'd make some pronouncement. But no, I think you're all right. So really good questions. Mike has just written a 100-word essay. All right, Mike, come on. What are you saying? We'll give you the last word.
I was trying to just sneak it in the chat, but I'm busted. I was saying that ISO 55000 is the Bible of asset management. That some people are going to think that they should focus on one aspect, or people should focus on another. And some people will go for ROI, and some people will go for productivity improvement, and some will say it's about customer satisfaction. And it doesn't matter, as long as everybody uses it the way that they want to, they will get a benefit and the world will benefit. And we need a lot of organizations to be using this document because we are in a world of trouble. And this is one of the few paths out of it that I have ever seen. And it seems crazy to think that the world can act in a unified manner to help get us out of the shithole that we're in. But this is a good path. It's a chance. So I appreciate all of you trying to make it better and trying to figure out how to make it more popular and aware, and let me know how I can help.
Well, Mike, I don't think I could do a better summary than that. And Nick, you need to, make that a clip for Mike. You can wear that on his sleeve. That was a great rant. I really like it. So let me say, before I turn it over to Nick, let me say thank you to everybody that joined us today, but a special thanks to our panelists, and really appreciate all your views and your participation and support of the ALM. And like Mike says, maybe we can make something happen here. Who knows? Nick?
Thanks, Jim. Yep, and I'm just here to close this out by thanking our patron sponsors, Definitive Logic, Onuma System, ABS Quality Evaluations, and ABS Group, as well as our organizational members, and especially highlighting the Andrew James Advisory Group for their upcoming course starting December 6th.
And the US Tag, who sponsored this event. Thank you, Kris.
US Tag.
Thank you.
And we never really say that, but your organization too could join the ALM, so we could do that. thank you all and have a great day and see you at the next meeting, wherever that may be.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank
you
you,
very much.
everybody.